not know which meeting to join.
The meeting ID is the one ending in 0991. That's the one that it should be.
But the one on the calendar is the one that starts with the 898.
Okay, so it should start with 826.
So do we want to end this one and start the other one?
So we still have the 826 live right now. Both of us are on the same, right?
We are, but
Okay,
no
so
one's
we're
going
gonna-
to be able to get in.
We're gonna put that in there. Huh?
Okay.
She's gonna fix it in a minute.
Okay.
We're good. We're ready?
Hold on, let me unmute. Okay.
Is 5:01 p.m. and I now officially call the Development and Services Committee meeting to order. Well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Recording in progress.
Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Pugh,
Here.
Teratio, Barron, English,
Present.
Newton.
Here.
We have a quorum.
And I will note that Councilwoman Barron let me know that she would be attending our meeting virtually. My understanding is that there are a few technical issues that we are sorting out. And so once those have been complete, we will probably have Ms. Barron joining us as well. Also would like to recognize that Mr. Brown, our administrator, had a conflict today, and we will let our fearless Assistant County Administrator lead the charge today, Eric Jensen, and we're always accompanied by the indomitable Patrick Wright, our county attorney. That brings us to our next item of business, which is item number 2, approval of the minutes on pages 5 through 7.
So move, Madam Chair.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the minutes that has been properly seconded. Madam Clerk?
Pugh,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Item 3 is the adoption of the agenda. Before we entertain a motion, are there any changes from staff?
Madam Chair, we have no changes at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Jensen, I'll entertain a motion for the adoption of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk?
Pugh,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Item 4 is items for action. We have one item, item 4A, from the Department of Public Works Engineering for the Harborside Point right-of-way. It is in your agenda on pages 8 through 17. Is there a member of staff that would like to address that? I recognize Director of Transportation, Michael Maloney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have just a one-page handout I'll provide.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, the Public Works Department requests that County Council approve the transfer of a portion of right-of-way at the intersection of Long Point Lane and Harborside Circle to the developer, Lake Carolina Development. With that, in the packet, there are maps, and I noticed the map was hard to interpret or find that specific piece of land. So I provided a map of that. This right-of-way is an unoccupied right-of-way. It goes to what would be an unnamed street ultimately. And if you follow where the U in unnamed is, that's the property line now. And then the front side of that, that trapezoidal shape is what they're asking to become the new right-of-way line. And so that area shaded in is the transfer of the 600 and, what was it, 39 square feet. 639.47 square feet.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. Are there any questions from the body? Hearing none, I do have one question, and Mr. Wright, this question may be for you. So we have received this additional map as supplemental information. Would it be appropriate for us to include it with the minutes or update the packet on the website just for better transparency with the public?
Yes, you can include it in the minutes, and if the choice is to update the packet, you can as well. But I would definitely include it in the minutes.
Thank you. So we'll just ask that our clerk include this map in the minutes again, just so that our citizens have the ability to see what we have seen. So if there are no questions, the recommendation of staff is that we do this right-of-way transfer. Is there a motion?
Moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk?
Pugh,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Maloney. That brings us to item 5. I move to direct the administrator to conduct a review of the rank weeds and vegetation ordinance, not named by me, and recommend any updates that would improve the effectiveness of the ordinance, particularly as it relates to safety, enforcement, and blight reduction. Among many recommendations, one of them is that the name of this ordinance is changed to noxious weeds. And Mr. Jensen, do you want to address the ordinance before us? And if I may just ask my question in advance, I know that we received input from many stakeholders, including the Sheriff's Department. So as you tell us any additional information we need, if you can just address how or if we've incorporated comments from our stakeholders.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Am I recognized? Thank you. Yes, thank you, committee members. Very briefly, the ordinance was drafted in collaboration with multiple parties, including the Richland County Sheriff's Office, who does most of the noxious weed-related code enforcement for the county. All of the language that is in the draft before you today has been vetted through all parties and includes their comments. So yes, so you have the information before you includes the comments and recommendations of the County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you. Has Ms. Barron joined us? I would like to recognize again that Ms. Barron gave proper notice that she would be joining us virtually today. We did have some technological difficulties that prevented her from joining right at our meeting start, but she is here now. Ms. Barron, we are talking about item 5A, and I'll just pause to see if you would like to be recognized or have any questions or comments.
No, ma'am. Thank you for recognizing me. But I would, I was watching on YouTube while I was waiting to be let in. If the clerk would please record my votes in the affirmative for the previous items.
A request is noted, Councilwoman Barron. Thank you. Any questions from the body about this motion? Well, Mr. Jensen, what would a day be if I didn't have a question? How would you know where you were? So I think I have two questions, and one of them is for Mr. Wright. But again, I think we discussed this before, but this is an ordinance. And if you look at item A2, it talks about the definition of a rural area, and it specifically refers to a zoning designation, which, depending on how you look at it, effective Wednesday or effective March doesn't exist. And so I'm not sure what the appropriate edit is, but my concern is that if we pass this, it would not be consistent with our new land development code, and I would rather it just be correct.
If I may, Madam.
You're recognized, Mr. Jensen.
Thank you. We anticipated that, and if you'll notice, rural is not capitalized.
Okay.
And so I believe within the Land Development Code, there are 3 zones that are classified as rural zoning designations, which are the HM, RT, and AG. And I believe this does not need correction. However, because you brought it up, I will go back and double check to make sure that the LDC as adopted specifies those 3 zones as rural zones.
Thank you for double checking. I feel pretty confident that that is how they are listed, and thank you for noting that it's lowercase rural. But again, just wanted to make sure that we're consistent before we send anything to council.
Okay.
And again, because you got the feedback from our sheriff's department, they feel confident that they would be able to enforce the ordinance as revised.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, then my last question is for Mr. Wright, and I think I know the answer to this. And it's not the answer that I want, so I'm asking again in case something changes. But we run into circumstances where someone's vegetation, overgrown trees, et cetera, are infringing upon the property of others. And in fact, what prompted me to make this motion is just such a case where I have a constituent who lives next to a vacant lot where the overgrown trees are actually a threat to her life and limb. They are falling over into her yard, and in fact, a limb entered her bedroom one rainy night, and fortunately she wasn't there. And so I know that they have looked at civil claims, which have not gone anywhere for a variety of reasons, but is there anything that we have the authority to do that is either in this ordinance now or that we are legally allowed to put in this ordinance that stops, someone's vegetation and someone's yard from it actually endangering or jeopardizing the property of another person? You're recognized, Mr. Wright.
Yes, I don't think that there's anything that we could add to do more at this point. And I think that the situation that you're talking about as to what happened that kind of prompted this revision, unfortunately, I think that when something is on somebody's own property, until something happens where, say, it affects the other person's property or other people, I don't think there's a lot we can do beforehand.
Okay, well, for example, that's beforehand,
Right.
but afterhand, I don't know what the word is.
I think it has to be a civil action that they would have to take, that the property owner would have to take a civil action in court.
And I know this is a hypothetical question, which attorneys love, and that you have not seen this property. Mr. Jensen, I do believe that you drove out to see this property. As we understand this updated ordinance as drafted, let's just take aside what is happening to this other property owner. Do we have reason to believe that just the way they have their property in and of itself would be in violation of this ordinance and that property owner could be cited?
If it meets the standards of the ordinance, they could be cited. But it would have to be law enforcement or code enforcement that does it, and not the neighbor that has a concern or something. They would have to notify the proper officials so they can come out and deem whether it violates the ordinance or not.
Okay, so if, for example, if you look at page 21 and you have item E on the top of that page, notice to the responsible party to maintain, and then it says, whenever the sheriff finds that unsafe or noxious vegetation exists upon any lot or parcel of land in such a manner as to consider nuisance, he may serve notice. Right. And so I guess I'm trying to figure out what this safe determination is and safe for whom and how that works specifically in the circumstance I'm trying to address.
And that's the thing, is that specifically that's what the law enforcement officer would have to make that determination as to what would be considered unsafe.
Okay.
According to the ordinance, because it would have to fit into what is considered unsafe in the ordinance.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wright and Mr. Jensen. Just looking to the body, I don't see any raised hands online. All right, then, with that in mind, Mr. Jensen, this was presented to us for feedback and review. Apart from my questions and comments, I don't have any feedback. It doesn't look like others do. Then would the next step be to present a motion, or is there some additional work that needs to happen?
Madam Chair, I do not believe that there is any additional work other than for our review to confirm that it does not conflict or that it conforms with the land development code regarding rural residential or rural zoning designations.
Okay.
I do not know, I would leave it to the county attorney to determine whether or not an action could be taken today, but I do not need any additional direction.
Thank you. Ms. Wright?
If you want to forward it to full council pending the review of that matter, you can do that. And then when it comes before full council, if there is some language that needs to be addressed, it can be addressed before the full council if you want to do that.
Thank you. And again, as this is an ordinance, it would be coming to us for first reading, and there would be 3 readings and a public hearing. Thank you.
Correct.
I'll entertain a motion.
So move, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and properly seconded to forward the ordinance to council for review, pending additional information from administration on the items that were discussed today. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll? Vote.
Pugh? Yes. Barron?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Newton?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. That brings us to item 6, direct the administrator to research and present to council current laws and benefits of enacting impact fees in Richland County. The purpose is to help reduce the tax burden on residents by not having to pay the complete cost of development in Richland County. We do have a briefing document in our agenda on page 27, and ACA Jensen, I'll just invite you to share any additional updates you'd like to share.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very briefly, I spoke with the procurement director earlier today, and this item will go forward in early December for out to bid for RFP. So we're maybe about 2 or 3 weeks behind where I'd hope to be, but we will still have something, I assume, by February or March for the committee.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the body? Then quickly, once the once the vendor is selected, the work is conducted, and we have some sort of report, that report will come back to us, back to this committee.
If that is your request, then yes.
I think that's appropriate to give us time to work through it. I just wanted to confirm.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That brings us to item 6B, which I could ask Councilwoman English to read, but I won't. I move to direct the administrator to review and update the illegal dumping ordinance, including raising fines up to $5,000, jail time, and community service, i.e. picking up debris on roadways. There is additional information in our briefing document, or our agenda rather, on pages 28 to 40, and I'll invite staff to share information with us.
If I may be recognized.
You are recognized, ACA Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would defer to Director Maloney. I have not been directly involved in this particular effort, and so he's going to be more informed than I am on this topic.
Thank you. Mr. Maloney, would you care to share additional information? And I guess that's not the right question, because even if you don't care to share, we're still we're asking you to come on down.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have to say, I feel bad when you're leaning over to the mic. I wish we could make it higher for you. Sure. Is there any general update that you would like to give in summation before the body asks questions, Mr. Maloney?
Well, the request kind of provided for two staff requested a certain dollar amount, like a larger amount, and our review and kind of got into the state level and other governments, but at the state level, our current, we're over $1,000 now. Our issue, and I mentioned some recommendations for second offenses and beyond, but it is truly a harder item to identify those that kind of perpetrated the problem. Every now and then, we find something with an address or something like that, but generally, you know, when we're finding roadside tires, you know, piles of litter, furniture, beds, things like that, mattresses, there's nothing to, you know, to be found unless you have some sort of surveillance on that particular area. And we have, I know our refuse control is looking at improving that. Dr. Thompson gave us some good ideas on equipment to use that can be downloaded and provide license plate numbers and things like that. I think, you know, we were using something similar to a deer cam, which isn't as quite as brilliant of a picture and certainly of things in motion. So we are changing to those types of systems. But in here, we made some recommendations really to kind of put that before legal, and I think it's in their court right now, but it's looking at where the state had jail time and and community service. And so we right now don't have community service. We recommended that. And we also always just indicated up to a certain jail time, but not like a minimum. And maybe, and the reason we put that you know, that's getting legal review is that may be required to be that way. It may not be allowed to have a minimum. It may be up to the court. So we just wanted to get those items reviewed for you as well. And that's where we are right now.
Thank you. So then just one clarification before I recognize Ms. English. So this is here under items pending analysis. So this is still with our entire staff who's conducting a review.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. English, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one of the things I wanted to be clear about is that I'm not trying to put people in jail. I'm really trying to keep our county beautiful. And I'm disheartened when I go out and see mattresses that shouldn't be on the side of the road when we provide that free service for someone to pick them up. And I just really want people to be more mindful that, you know, these are our neighbors. These are the people that we work with, and we don't think that people will do that. But the amount of money that it cost Richland County to clean that up makes a big difference. And when you don't consider that, you don't even understand. This makes taxes go up, you know, because it does require personnel to go back and pick up something for a service that's already provided. So it's like doing double work. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. English. Any other comments from the body? Hi, Mr. Wait, no. Too soon. So two things, and one, and I appreciate Councilwoman English's comments, because I will say I hate litter with a passion. It would be hard to tell you how much I hate litter. Of all the world's problems, this is one we could fix it today, just right now. We could just fix it if people would throw their stuff in the appropriate place. I will just say, as much as I hate it, the idea of sending someone to jail for littering, I just find, I personally don't know that I am ready to pull that trigger. And if it's the will of the body, it's fine, because there's 10 other people who can feel fine with that. But it is something that troubles me. But I want to understand if I read something incorrectly, or if maybe there was a mistake in the briefing document, because in the briefing document, or the summary rather, it says on page 29, it says that staff recommends jail time after the first offense, but on page 32, it says the second offense. So is that because we're looking at old information that you haven't modified yet, and that's why it's different? I just want to be clear on what your real recommendation is.
It would be what's in the body, but the second offense and beyond would be what we were recommending.
Okay, so second offense and beyond. And then remind me again, for the state has jail time for the what offense?
I would have to look that up, but yeah.
Well, I guess I'm wondering, so it's just based on volume and not time, like the first time you do it, it's based on how much you litter? Yeah, and maybe something like that. And I've seen some truly egregious things, and I know that the areas that Cheryl and I represent, and there's some places where if one person leaves one can, everybody else says, oh, well, I should bring my mattresses, and then everybody goes, and it's like the mattress place and in perpetuity. So, okay, so I've stated my concern about jail time. I do also have a question, sorry, to go back to page 30. And I think this is in another ordinance that we have where we talk about, one moment, we talk about people having to cover their vehicles. I think it's on page 30.
Right there.
Well, good, wherever it is. We talk about people having to cover their vehicles, and this isn't necessarily part of Ms. English's intent, but one thing I frequently get complaints about from constituents is that they feel like some of these, for lack of a better term, haulers, so they're commercial vehicles that are going from place to place, you know, hopefully not dump trucks that we're paying, but they're these groups that are hauling big trucks that aren't appropriately tying down their loads, and that they are guilty of a lot of litter because things are falling off. And so my question is this the place? Is there another place where we can tighten that down? Is there anything else we can do on the front end? That was the universe saying, yes, there is. Is there anything that we can do on the front end to tighten it down for those commercial vehicles?
In other words, you mean a different ordinance, or?
Is it this ordinance or a different ordinance where we would address it? And then wherever we address it, is there an opportunity to be stronger either in the requirements or in the enforcement for those specific vehicles? It looks like Mr. Wright wants to be recognized.
Yes, I think that this is the ordinance that
Okay.
would deal with it, and I think the language is there in the ordinance that says it's unlawful, so I think it would have to be just basically enforced.
Okay. And so as the proposed ordinance that we're discussing now, the updates, as this updates are proposed, the commercial vehicle would be subject to these same fines, the fine, the jail time, the same thing?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll still just say, this is the ordinance. I don't know if there's anything we can do either in our communication with the commercial haulers or something, but I would love it if we took a firmer approach towards them.
So refuse control and special services does have the authority to stop someone for that, but they don't have the authority to continue to pursue or anything somebody that continues to drive. So we don't have that type of authority, and it being in this ordinance, I don't know if that affects the sheriff's department, whether that's something they would pursue. So.
Recognize, Mr.
Since it's an ordinance, and if it does carry, you know, if it's a criminal offense, they would have the authority to deal with it. It just, I guess, depends on if it's a priority to them at that moment when it happens.
Thank you. And again, as Mr. Maloney said, I mean, one of the biggest problems that we have is we don't see who does it when they do it. I mean, I think that would be wonderful if we did. We probably need to dig deep in our budget and find some more cameras, but yes, that's a whole different issue. Are there any other comments or questions for the body? Councilwoman English, you're recognized.
I just wanted to thank staff for working diligently on this. It really does mean a lot, especially when you live in the country and love beautiful scenery. I pass there and see trash. I'm like, if we could stop it today, I would. So, but thank you for the work.
Oh, well, thank you, Mr. Maloney. That is item 6B. If there are no other questions or comments, that brings us to item 7, adjournment.
Sure.
Moved and properly seconded, Madam Clerk.
Pugh,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes,
Motion approved.
meeting adjourned. Thank you.